Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of our weekly series, the Neoteran Herald Weekly. It is your weekly astrology guide. Um, I want to just give an apology because this episode should have gone out on Saturday afternoon last week. It didn't. We didn't manage to do that, but we are doing it as a filler. We're not going to do a lot. We're just going to concentrate on looking at the important signs that are there within the week, and we'll delve a little bit into a bit of teaching, a bit of more explanation, a bit more of your familiarization with the Neoteran system and references that you keep making. Uh, so please do pay attention. Remember, if you have not watched episode 1, remember to look at that as well so that you can get a little bit more of understanding. These episodes build upon each other, and therefore listen to episode 2 will alone may not give you as much useful understanding of what we are talking about. That we're sorry, just listen to episode 2 without listening to episode 1 may not give you as much actionable information as you need. Now, let's stop with that. Let me go into the introduction. We just introduce myself, and my name is Joroge Wahome Warugongo. I am your personal astrologer coming to you from our studios, and I want us to delve quickly the second episode of our series. This is week number 37. Something else to explain is that last week when we were talking, we talked about week number 35. That's a little bit of it was wrong because while we were preparing and starting the episode exactly on week, and it was week 35, but we're looking forward to week 36. So that episode was for week 36. This one is for week 37, and on Saturday afternoon we do week 38, the coming week that is going to start on the first day of the week. My name is Joroge. Again, as I say, Joroge Wahome Warugongo, your personal astrologer coming to you. I come here, try to explain, try to teach you some things that you can understand about what is or rather what the new week portends for you. I'll not go into any more details. I just want us to transition to now understanding our guide as it is, and we'll look at first of all the alignments as they are this week. Again, this is week number 37 of our year 005 Errorenium. Errorenium, just Latin for talking about the era of the kingdom or the age of the kingdom, which we are currently enforcing and making it to be. Therefore, this is a very detailed table of alignments as they are, and I'm not going to much depth of understanding of what they are. We'll share this in the global community group so that you can make reference. But I'll say this is mostly useful to you if you do have a Neoteran natal astrology profile. The natal astrology profile is not so much a profile of who you are, but of the time and your cosmic vibration as times and seasons change. That's what it is. For you to understand what you can do creatively, because we're talking about creative astrology, what you can create, what you can program in your reality, into your everyday life and its happenings. So you can take this chart and be able to compare it with your own natal chart, table, alineations of other planets and their motions, and we to see parallels there. And that is why I encourage people to not only get a profile, some people do get a profile, but they don't reach out to get better understanding of what their profile is about. And that I want you to really take that seriously. But let's go to something more understandable here. We're going to look at the major planets as they are this weekend. And here we are, week number 37, and these are the major planets as they are in the heavens. To give us a good and proper understanding, we are going to also look at week number 36. Just take a glimpse of the situation as it was of the course of week 36, what we did explain last week, and make a comparison as you transition to this day as you transition to this current week. What are the major differences? What you see here is if because let me just show my highlighter so that if you need to illustrate a point you'll be able to get it. But let me go to week number 36. Week number 36, and you can see I said this was very unique of last week, that we had this line of the planets all in the northern hemisphere. The heavens, that is a particular moment that we cast this profile on this alignment of the major planets in the heavens. They were all clustered together in a way, and as you can see, the sun is the designator of them. We had three of the major planets appearing in the evening, and three of the others appearing in the dawn sky. So that itself is what an explanation. You'll not hear many people speaking about it because, of course, now it doesn't fit a little bit more of their concept of liner planets, but it's still a very significant and quite rare alignment of the planets, rather than the one that was being harped about in astrological sense. Maybe in astronomical sense, it's not as much spectacular because of the sun where its position just means in the evening you only have three stars to observe in the evenings, and then late after midnight is when you can start expecting the others to rise. And actually, they don't even rise close to midnight. They rise very, very, like 2 hours towards dawn is when you start seeing them. Therefore, that was significant itself. Look at this. If you look at this week, you'll see that not much has changed. Of course, the moon has changed from being in the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere as it is here in house number 3. And but the others, because they move a lot slowly, you'll not see much difference as minor planets. You'll not be looking at the minor planets at this point in time. So if we look at week 36, you'll see that as you move on, you'll see a planets like the ones that will make considerable motions. Of course, other than the moon will do so, the sun will, Mercury and Venus. They want us to look at something significant here. So you see, Mercury is actually one of the highlights for this week, is that it is transitioning clearly to, at the middle of the week, it was at the cusp of house number 7, Habits elder in our system, moving to house 8. But as we speak now, it is squaring house 8. So that is a motion, it's a transit. We were talking last week about transits. So that's a major, it's a planetary transit that happened last week. But remember, we also spoke about significant ones that are called gateway, creative gateway transit. It's not creative gateway transit, this one, but it's still a planetary transit for planet Mercury. So another thing you're going to see is that if you go to week 36, it seems like planet Venus also is moving in the very same way. We say planets move in prograde fashion, is that they start at the beginning of the celestial grid here, and then they move across with reference to your display screen from the left to the right. And when they do that, we say they are moving in prograde fashion. We say they are moving in prograde fashion. But if we move in the other direction, as all these planets are wont to do, except for the sun and the moon, you see they are moving in retrograde. Sometimes they are at standstill. So why is it, if you look at the chart, I wanted us to explain a little bit about, if you go back to that table of data, is if you look at planet Venus, we'll see, and if I can zoom a little bit more there, if you look, this planet Venus in our system is planet number 6, and I don't know whether you can see clearly. The major indicator of what, if you looked at the motion of planet Venus across the celestial heavens, you see that its ecliptic longitude is going to increase. And therefore, that would seem to show that if it was I want to call a common planet, we'll call it prograde. Why? Because if we go to week 36, that's what I'm going to try to do here for us, is that if you look at the ecliptic longitude of planet Venus here, is that its ecliptic longitude was 178 degrees. But what about this week? Okay, let me stop zooming and we go to week 37. What did you see was the ecliptic longitude of what on week 36? I've just forgotten, sorry for that. But the ecliptic longitude was 178. That on week 36 or 37? Yes, week 36 was 178 degrees. Let's move away from that and then move here, and we see that its ecliptic longitude is 189 over 11 degrees in what is prograde. So if you go to other astrological system, they'll tell you Venus is in prograde because it's in ecliptic longitude, or even its right ascension, they have increased with relationship to the celestial heavens. But Venus is a very special planet, belongs to just 3 planets, or actually 2, that exhibit that kind of motion. And that motion, we call it synodic. So the synodic motion, the synodic cycle of Venus is more important than the ecliptic cycle or its movement along the zodiac. But how it is in relationship with the sun, that is what guides us. And if you look now at that specific designation, we'll look at what we call, so this is what's the importance of these all these data. I just wanted to take that point to tell you about this. So if you look at week number 37 and we look at how far Venus is from the sun, that is explained for us in this column, Neoteran solar elongation. And in the elongation, the solar elongation of these Venus is infrasolar. That is why we begin with an I. Infrasolar 44 degrees. So it is 44 degrees from the sun, this the week 37. But if you go to week 36, here, just a minute, quickly, so that we don't take too more time, is that you see, here we're talking about Venus, this is still week 37, sorry. And if you look at that particular designation for planet Venus, which is here, and you look at it, it's 42 degrees. And therefore, what it tells us is that the distance, while Venus is behind the sun, that distance is increasing. If it was in prograde, proper prograde, the distance from Venus to the sun would be increasing. Would be decreasing rather. Yes, it will be decreasing, and therefore the difference will be smaller, the magnitude of its separation from the sun, but it's increased over a period of a week, 7 days, it's increased by 2 degrees. And therefore, it is still in retrograde. If you talk about Mercury, you see it's very different. Like if you look here, week 36, you're talking about week 36, and Mercury is here, number 4, planet number 4. And if you look at its elongation from the sun is 22 degrees. That is a week ago. And if you go now to this week and you look at planet Mercury's, and you look at planet Mercury, which is, as I said, is number 4 here, and you look at it, it's 17 degrees. So it has decreased. The magnitude of its separation over the sun has decreased. And that is why we say Mercury is infrasolar prograde. But Venus, which seems to exhibit the same sort of motion if we measure it against the background of the stars, it's in infrasolar retrograde because it's moving a lot slower than the sun is in its prograde motion transition of the heavens. So that is part of why this information is important. It helps us to guide into those kinds of understandings. I don't want to go into a lot more detail about those other than just what I've mentioned here. Now, if you go back to the major planets, I don't know whether there's something else I need to mention about them, relationship with the emotions this week. So there they are in week 36, and here they are in week number 37. Of course, still, we're talking about the transition of Saturn from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere and across this gateway, creative gateway transit. It will do what that it is about to do is a creative gateway transit. Since the beginning of the age, uh, planet Saturn has done 3 planetary transits, but none of them have been creative gateway transits. None of them have been across a creative gateway celestial point. A creative gateway celestial point. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we go on. So let's transition back to because that, of course, that transit has yet to happen. Let's go look at the minor planets, and we begin as usual with as they appear this week. Then we'll look at how they did appear last week. And here we are, week 37 of year 005 Erenium, and this is the lineup of the minor planets and the transitory or planetary celestial points. That is the anti-solar point, the lunar descending point, and the lunar ascending node, or rather the anti-solar point, lunar descending node, and the lunar ascending node. Then the 5 minor planets classified by the most planetary, most transient to the ones that are close to being stars in their motion: Vesta, Ceres, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Eris. So here they are. As you can see, this is Vesta with the anti-solar point. More or less, last week when you looked at them, they were in perfect conjunction. Right now, they're still in conjunction, but only a house and host conjunction because they are both in house 2 under the hostage of constellation, the zodiac being called Libra. And that's where they are. But as you can see, the anti-solar point, which is a lot more quicker than planet Vesta, has moved along. And we see here Pluto, more or less where it was last week. If you go to last week, you'll see Pluto has not moved at all. Planet Pluto, you cannot track its motion over 1 week, maybe over a year. It is still at the entrance of Cabell, as it has been for well over a year now. There is again another transit that happened over last year, the 4th year. It was one of the most significant emotions because, of course, Pluto doesn't do that every single year or decades. It takes decades to do those kinds of transits. Now, I want us to take a notice of something that was significant last week. There's multiple planetary conjunction at this point, this creative gateway point that we call the ascending source, equinox, the ascending equinox point, the division between house number 6 and house Habizelda in the Neoteran system is that you see there are 3 planets here. Namely, there is Ceres, there is Neptune, and there was the ascending point. The lunar ascending node. But something significant has happened. Something significant has happened that now we can see, instead of last week where the ascending node was planked in the point the division, and more or less it could be described as being in house happy Zelda. This week we are talking about it being in house 6. So it has made that transition again. That is important. You're going to notice that. And or rather in the highlights, you're going to declare that. Now, this is last week when you looked, it was a 5-planet conjunction because Venus and Saturn was still here within the cusp. But if you notice where we showed Venus to be, we look at where we showed Venus to be in the major alignments. You can see Venus has moved along considerably from where it was last week. So it's no longer in conjunction with those other 4 planets. So we leave, instead of having a 5 constant 4 or 5 planets, sorry, at the descending, the ascending equinox celestial fixed point, is that we have 4 now instead of 5 planets. Venus has left that congregation of planets, and in its regular motion across the heavens, it is moved considerably away, even if it seems to be moving back with relationship to its standard measure of its cycle, which is the sun. Therefore, we'll look at that in more detail. Let's go back to just the minor planets again. And as you can see here, that's where they were last week, and that's where they are this week. As I said, the major one to consider is the lunar descending node. So let's look at the highlights themselves. The first one, of course, is that of the 4 conjunctions that are still the conjunctions of the 4 planets at the cusp of house 6 and Habizelda, which is the Neoteran celestial house number 6, and namely, as we did name them last week, of course, with the exception of Venus, is a Saturn, planet Ceres, planet Neptune, and the planetary celestial point called lunar ascending node. Again, I explained a little bit of what the lunar ascending node is about. I don't think I need the highlighter anymore, so let's take it away from our display. And the other highlights here, we're going to try to go quickly through them, is that this is the very first time, as I've mentioned, that the lunar descending node is definitively in Neoteran house 6 rather than being in house 7 Habizelda, but close enough to have influence of house number 6. Now we talk the other way around. It's now definitively within house 6, but within close proximity of Habizelda as to be significant in creative considerations and permutations. The second thing is, okay, so a little bit just a further extrapolation of this point is that we need to understand the lunar nodes, not just the descending one, but even the ascending one, they move across the heavens in retrograde fashion. They move in retrograde motion. They don't move in prograde as we usually see other planets move, but always they move in retrograde. And that means this transition, because if talking about moving to house 6, if you're talking about the usual way of moving, we'll be talking about the planet moving from house number 5, Cabell, into house number 6. So, but this one is retrograde. It's moving from a higher house, a house with a higher designation, not higher that it is of more importance, of more consequence than the other, but it is further along in the zodiac cycle than house number 6, but it's moved to that. That's because there is a motion. That is the usual thing when you talk about nodes. Nodes move in retrograde fashion across the celestial heavens. That's why it is possible to have that. Planets like Venus, Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, they all can do those kind of transits. They can do retrograde transits. But you'll never hear us talking about the moon and the sun doing retrograde transits unless you've engineered something close to what Joshua managed to do, fighting the Canaanite kings. Now let's look at more highlights across what, or rather just a little bit more of explanation. It's very important. This is the first time that the lunar descending node is definitively in celestial house, Neoteran celestial house number 6 in the Neoteran age. So we're talking about a fast. We're going to have so many fasts. So this week number 37, has been significant because it has taken, there's something special that has happened. Never has happened since we begin. The Neoteran age is only, it's just a bit less than 5 years old, but significantly we have reached a milestone in that sense. And I think that is a point I've already explained. I'll not go into it. I'll say this though, I'll just emphasize on this, although I've mentioned it before, is that division between Habizelda and house number 6, or if you refer it the other way, between house number 6 and Habizelda, house number 7, is a fixed celestial point, and it is the ascending equinox. It is not a solstice point. That is a bit of an error, and let's correct it just now. It's the ascending, not solstice, but equinox point. Okay, yeah, it's this ascending equinox, not solstice. Okay, seems something has treasures up into my display. Okay, so here we are. Yeah, the ascending equinox point is very, very important that we are accurate with these references. That's not the solstice point. The solstice point is usually much higher. It's not across the equator. So the ascending equinox point. Let's talk a little bit more about the ascending equinox point because it's one of the 4 creative gateway points in Neoteran astrology. And I should also mention that it is one of the 4 planetary cycle Neoteran astrology's planetary cycles. Planetary cycles, because there are 4 creative gateway points. These are in the planetary or in the celestial heavens, in Neoteran astrology's celestial grid. That is what it should say. That is celestial Neoteran astrology's celestial grid. And let's just go back to this celestial grid. Now, another point to notice is that it takes about 18.6 solar years. Within 18.6 solar years, the lunar nodes, both ascending and descending, complete or they complete a full cycle, planetary cycle of the heavens. And that is to mean that I will have to wait another 18.6 years, 18.6 years for the lunar ascending, the lunar ascending node, because it's not descending node, and I did a lot of errors in preparing these notes. The lunar ascending node to transit across the descending equinox point. Again, it's not ascending. This is yeah, it's ascending. Actually, that's correct. Everything is ascending. Although, being a retrograde planet, there's a particular planet will move in ascending fashion. It will move in a descending fashion across a point which the planets like the sun move in descending fashion, in a setting fashion, but it is actually descending across the heavens. Thank you. So that is it. We just need to look at some other significant transits or highlights of the week, and that is one that I've already illustrated, so I'm not going to that. And the Mercury's prograde transit happens on the Sunday. So that is last Sunday, 13th of the 9th common month of year 005 era Renew. Then on Tuesday, the 15th of the 9th month, again, we attained what we call the lunisolar opposition. The sun and the moon were right opposite each other, and this implication for tides and other human affairs. And then the moon comes to her descending lunar tides. This is something you've not discussed a lot because it's a little bit very specific, and therefore, without one of our astrological profiles, natal profiles, the exact meaning of the lunar tides or lunar standstill took place the 18th of the 9th month, era 5, year 005, era Renew. And therefore, if you do have comments, you have questions, you have remarks, you have anything to contribute towards what sort of events you have talked today, you can reach out to me. Remember to use the comments. You can reach out to us also on our social media handles. Join our astrological community, global astrological community at Neoteran Astro on our WhatsApp platform. We'll put a link in the description of this video, so that if you want to understand more, you can participate in our daily transits and everything else that we talk in that community there. You can get more detailed posts there as you continue. Have an amazing week. Today we are not, of course, doing the transit to welcome the new week because this is a recorded episode. But have an amazing week. Shalom.